All right, now we have the Masoretic Period, 500 to 900 AD. The Masoretes were the Jewish scholars who between AD 500 and AD 950 gave the final form to the text of the Old Testament. The destruction of the temple in AD 70, along with the dispersion of the Jews from their land, became a powerful impetus to standardize the consonantal text and standardize punctuation and the use of vowels to preserve correct vocalization and pronunciation for the reading. They were called Masoretics because they preserved in writing the oral tradition concerning the correct vowels and accents and the number of occurrences of rare words of unusual spellings. They received the unpointed, comparable to English without vowels, consonantal text of the Sopherim and inserted the vowel points that gave to each word its exact pronunciation and grammatical form. They even engaged in a modern amount of textual criticism. Wherever they suspected that the word indicated by the consonantal text was erroneous, they corrected it in a very ingenious way. They left the actual consonants undisturbed as they had received them from the Sopherim, but they inserted vowel points that belonged to the new word they were substituting for the old, and then inserted the consonants of the new word itself in very small letters in the margin. Very meticulous. That's why our Old Testament Bible is equally comparable as the New Testament in accuracy and transmission. There were two major schools or centers of Masoretic activity, each largely independent of the other, the Babylonian and the Palestinian. The most famous Masoretes were the Jewish scholars living in Tiberias in Galilee, Moses ben Asher with his son Aaron, and Moses ben Naphtali in the late 9th and 10th centuries. The Ben Asher text is the standard Hebrew text today and is best represented by Codex Leningradiensis and the Aleppo Codex. Hard to pronounce these words. The Masoretes, from Masorah, meaning tradition, accepted the laborious job of editing the text and standardizing it. Their headquarters was in Tiberias. The text which the Masoretes concluded with is called the Masoretic text. This resultant text had vowel points added in order to ensure proper pronunciation. This Masoretic text is the standard Hebrew text today. The Masoretes were well disciplined, for sure, and treated the text with the greatest imaginable reverence, and not just a part-time job. And they devised a complicated system of safeguards against the scribal slips. They counted, for example, the number of times each letter of the alphabet occurs in each book. They pointed out the middle letter of the Pentateuch and the middle letter of the whole Hebrew Bible and made even more detailed calculations than these. It's a mathematical accuracy test. Everything countable seems to be counted, says Wheeler Robinson, and they made up mnemonics by which the various totals might be readily remembered. Mnemonics. I don't know why the M is there. Sir Frederick Kenyon says, besides recording varieties of reading, tradition, or conjecture, the Masoretes undertook a number of calculations which do not enter into the ordinary sphere of textual criticism. They numbered the verses, words, and letters of every book. They calculated the middle word and the middle letter of each. They enumerated verses which contained all the letters of the alphabet, or a certain number of them, and so on. These trivialities, as we may rightly consider them, had yet the effect of securing minute attention to the precise transmission of the text, and they are but an excessive manifestation of a respect for the sacred scriptures, and definitely they're words of God, which in itself deserves nothing but praise. The Masoretes were indeed anxious that not one jot nor tittle, not one smallest letter, nor one tiny part of a letter of the law should pass away or be lost. A factor that runs throughout the above discussion of the Hebrew manuscript evidences is the Jewish reverence for the scriptures. With respect to the Jewish scriptures, however, it was not scribal accuracy alone that guaranteed their product. Rather, it was their almost superstitious reverence for the Bible. I'd say supernatural superstition, but indwelt by this Holy Spirit, perhaps, or influenced. According to the Talmud, there were specifications not only for the kind of skins to be used and the size of the columns, but the scribe was even required to perform a religious ritual before writing the name of God. Rules governed the kind of ink used, dictated the spacing of words, and prohibited wording and prohibited writing. Anything from memory. The lines and even the letters were counted methodically. If a manuscript was found to contain even one mistake, it was discarded and destroyed. See? This scribal formalism was responsible, at least in part, for the extreme care exercised in copying the scriptures, resulting in what? The most attested to and almost perfectly copied manuscript evidence of a book ever. It was also for this reason that there were only a few manuscripts, because the rules demanded the destruction of defective copies. So it flew few, but no tradition of this is even evident in the transmission of the Quran. Flavius Josephus, the Jewish historian, 1st century, writes, "We have given practical proof of our reverence for our own scriptures. For although such a long ages have now passed, no one has ventured either to add or to remove or to alter a symbol or syllable, and it is an instinct with every Jew from the day of his birth to regard them as the decrees of God, and they are, to abide by them, and, if need be, cheerfully to die for them." Time and again, ere now, the sight has been witnessed of prisoners enduring tortures and death in every form in the theaters, rather than utter a single word against the laws and the allied documents. Josephus continues by making a comparison between the Hebrew respect for Scripture and the Greek regard for their literature, while what Greek would endure as much as for the same cause, even to save the entire collection of his nation's writings from destruction, he would not face the smallest personal injury. For the Greeks, they are mere stories improvised according to the fancy of their authors, and in this estimate, even of the older historians, they are quite justified. When they see some of their own contemporaries venturing to describe events in which they bore no part, without taking the trouble to seek information from those who know the facts. So quotations and observations on the reliability of the Old Testament. Take a little sip here to clear my throat again. All this detail, amazing meticulosity, if there's such a word, of these scribes who transmitted and copied text. An old copy would be worn, and some things were obviously not able to be read. They redid the old text and carefully copied a new one. So Robert Dick Wilson's brilliant observations take the veracity and trustworthiness of scriptures back to Old Testament times. He writes, in 144 cases of transliteration from Egyptian, Assyrian, Babylonian, and Moabite into Hebrew, and in 40 cases of the opposite, or 184 in all, the evidence shows that for 2,300 to 3,900 years, the text of the proper names in the Hebrew Bible has been transmitted with the most minute accuracy, that the original scribes should have written them with such close conformity to correct philological principles is a wonderful proof of their thorough care and scholarship. So you're a philologist doing philological work. Further, that the Hebrew text should have been transmitted by copyists through so many centuries as a phenomena unequaled in the history of literature. See, tops of the line. You want to trust something? You got an accurate version? Go to the Bible. Wilson adds, there are about 40 of these kings living from 2000 to 400 BC, 2000 BC to 400 BC. Each appears in chronological order, with reference to the kings of the same country and with respect to the kings of other countries. No stronger evidence for the substantial accuracy of the Old Testament records could possibly be imagined than these collection of kings. Mathematically, it is one chance, and I don't know how many zeros, of that this accuracy is mere circumstance. Because of the evidence, Wilson concludes, the proof that the copies of the original documents have been handed down with substantial correctness for more than 2,000 years cannot be denied. That the copies in existence 2,000 years ago had been in like manner handed down from the originals is not merely possible, but as we have shown is rendered probable by the analogies of Babylonian documents now existing, of which we have both originals and copies, thousands of years apart, and of scores of papyri which show, when compared with our modern editions of the classics, that only minor changes of the text have taken place in more than 2,000 years, and especially by the scientific and demonstrable accuracy while the proper spelling of the names of the kings and the numerous foreign terms embedded in the Hebrew text has been transmitted. Amazing. They nitpick. F. Bruce states that the consonantal text of the Hebrew Bible, which the Masoretes edited, had been handed down to their time with conspicuous fidelity over a period of nearly 1,000 years. Can we say the same for the Quran? William Green concludes that it may safely be said that no other work of antiquity has been so accurately transmitted. Concerning the accuracy of the transmission of the Hebrew text, Atkinson, who was under librarian in the library at Cambridge University, says it is little short of miraculous. Rabbi Akiba, 2nd century AD, with a desire to produce an exact text, is credited with saying that the accurate transmission, the Masorete, of the text is a fence for the Torah, meaning a protection, guarantee of perfection. So, the Hebrew text, Josh McDowell. Quantity of manuscripts. Even though the Old Testament does not boast of the same quantity of MSS as the New Testament, the number of manuscripts available today is quite remarkable. Several reasons have been suggested for the scarcity of early Hebrew manuscripts. The first and most obvious reason is a combination of antiquity and destructibility. Papyrus disintegrates very quickly. 2,000 to 3,000 years is a long time to expect ancient documents to last. Nonetheless, several lines of evidence support the conclusion that their quality is very good. First, it is important to establish the quantity of manuscripts available. There are several important collections of Hebrew manuscripts today. The first collection of Hebrew manuscripts, made by Benjamin Kennicott and published by Oxford, listed 615 manuscripts of the Old Testament. Later, Giovanni de Rossi published at least a list of 731 manuscripts. The most important manuscript discovery in modern times are those of the Cairo Geniza and the Dead Sea Scrolls. In the Cairo synagogue attic, a Geniza, or storehouse, for old manuscripts was discovered. 200,000 manuscripts and fragments, 200,000, and worthing, some 10,000 of which are biblical, were found. 10,000 right there. Not quite perfect, but 99.5% accurate. That's not enough. We've got to be close to almost 100%. Near the end of the 19th century, many fragments from the 6th to 8th centuries were found in an old synagogue in Cairo, Egypt, which had been St. Michael's Church until 882. There were found there in a Geniza storage room where worn or faulty manuscripts were hidden until they could be disposed of properly. They had a ceremony to do that. This Geniza had apparently been walled off and forgotten until its recent discovery. In these small rooms, as many as 200,000 fragments were preserved, including biblical text in Hebrew and Aramaic. The Bible fragments date from the 5th century. Of the manuscripts found in the Cairo Geniza, about one half are now housed at Cambridge University. You want to go and find out about the Old Testament? Cambridge University. The rest are scattered throughout the world. Cairo Geniza's authority, Paul Cahill, has identified more than 120 rare manuscripts prepared by the Babylonian group of Masoretic scribes. The largest collection of Hebrew Old Testament manuscripts in the world is the Second Furkowitz collection in Leningrad, and it contains 1,582 items of the Bible and Masorah on parchment, 725 on paper, plus 1,200 additional Hebrew manuscripts fragments in the Antonin collection. Cayley, I guess that's his name, contends also that these Antonin collection manuscripts and fragments are all from the Cairo Geniza. In the Furkowitz collection are found 14 Hebrew Old Testament manuscripts from between the years AD 929 and AD 1121. That originated in the Cairo Geniza. Boy, they didn't mess around, did they? Slight little error, put it in a cabinet. We'll have a ceremony later on. But now we found this in this little building here, this little storage area. All of these Cairo Geniza manuscripts are scattered all over the world. Some of the better ones in the United States are in the Enlilo Memorial Collection at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. The British Museum catalog lists 161 Hebrew Old Testament manuscripts. At Oxford University, the Bodleian Library has 146 ones, each containing a large number of fragments. Goshen Gutson estimates that in the United States alone there are tens of thousands of Semitic manuscript fragments, about 5% of which are biblical, more than 500 manuscripts. The most significant Hebrew Old Testament manuscript date from between the 3rd century BC and the 14th century AD. Of these, the most remarkable manuscripts are those of the Dead Sea Scrolls. What did we learn from the Dead Sea Scrolls? Nothing new. Same old stuff. Perfection. Which date from the 3rd century BC to the 1st century AD.